What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're talking about the latest patch for Last Epoch 0.7.10. Now, this is a big patch because it brings with it quite a few highly requested features. As per usual, Last Epoch's pretty good about doing that, but the biggest thing is loot filters. These things are really versatile, and they, like I said, they've been a highly requested item, and they help you sort through the mountains of loot that drop. So you can customize them to hide, show, recolor, or emphasize items. These can be shared, which is great for people that work on builds and things like that. So if I have a build for a particular mage that I really like and I can share with you guys, I can share this loot filter that will highlight anything that you need to make that build work. So it makes my job as a creator easier because I can give you guys some things. So the way these loot filters work is they function off of a layering system, and these layers are going to be whatever filters you have in place. So you can have 1 to 15 up to 75 layers to really kind of fine tune what exactly you want to see on the ground. Now for me, I only have 1 or 2 layers, 3 on some classes, but for the most part it gets the job done. It highlights and recolors things that I want to see. It'll emphasize other things that I need to pay attention to. So there's a lot that kind of goes into this, and I do plan on putting together a short video, that way I can help you guys kind of hit the ground running. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Now moving on to the next big thing, and that is the campaign has had some major work done. So chapter 2 was completely overhauled in terms of visuals. It looks much better than it did before. Chapter 6 also got some visual updates. This is where you can find kind of those gory sewers we saw in the preview. And besides those visual updates, some chapters have also had new zones added, and others have had their zones reorganized to make a little bit more sense. Also, there's been attack animations that have been updated, and in addition to all of that, the Acolyte has brand new animations and armor sets. So the Acolyte was the last of the classes to get their animation update, and she looks much better than she did before. Much more fluid and much more natural than so robotic that we saw her last time. So moving next into boss fights. Now boss fights got some love. Now beforehand, if you were fighting a boss and you died, you had to restart at the beginning of the zone and the fight just kind of kept going. So if you die during a boss fight now, the fight naturally resets and you'll respawn right before that boss instead of at the beginning of the zone. This is a big quality of life update. I know for me personally, if I'm running through and trying to kill this boss and he ends up getting me and I wipe, I have to run all the way back through the zone. It's not great. It's not a good experience. This is going to help improve that a lot more. So next we're going to move into crafting. Now one of the biggest complaints about crafting was that you always had a chance to catastrophically fail, but you never had a chance to craft exceptionally well. There was no golden goose to chase after, and it kind of felt like you were always in this sort of risk it all type of situation to try to get to tier 5, and this really just didn't work. So this update aims to fix that with something called critical successes. Now, critical success is something that can happen randomly during your crafting experience. And a critical success is going to add an extra tier to an affix up to tier 5. So if you're crafting a vitality and it's tier 1 vitality and you're trying to go up to a tier 2, it's actually going to skip tier 2 and it's going to craft as a tier 3. So that way you can leapfrog some of that extra risk that you would have had to take going from a 2 to a 3. Maybe you're saving yourself a glyph of the Guardian or glyph of stability. So there's all sorts of kind of positives that come with that. It's something I think small but impactful when it comes to crafting, because it's going to make that whole experience a little more rounded and less painful to do. I think this is a strong change. I mean, this is something that when you rolled a damaging or destructive fracture, it was devastating. Usually you just threw the thing away. But with this, it's only going to reduce those affixes by 1 or 2. So it's not exactly going to be horrific. That item will be locked. You can't do anything to it, but at least you can still use it in the meantime until you find something you can either craft up to replace, or maybe you get lucky with a even better gear drop. All right, next I want to talk about the new skills. So 3 new skills were added into Last Epoch with this update. 1 for the mage, 1 for the sentinel, 1 for the acolyte. So we're going to start with the mage first, and that's Firebrand. So Firebrand is a new skill that unlocks deep within the Spellblade tree, and it's a melee attack that's going to give a stack of Firebrand whenever it hits an enemy. And each one of these stacks is going to give an increase to fire melee damage and increase the range of Firebrand. So I got out there and I was able to test this out a little bit before this video. And I think it's a good filler ability. It's something that you can use kind of in between cooldowns, things like that. You can use it to set up combinations with other melee attacks for your Spellblade, which is kind of cool, so you can create a kind of combo chain type of deal. So there's a lot you can do with this. I haven't had too much of a chance to test it out, but first impressions are pretty strong. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to become like crazy meta or anything like that, but I could be wrong. You get guys out there like Lizard IRL and Rhymed, and they can pretty much make magic with just about anything. So let's move into the next thing, and that's Infernal Shade. This one's for the Acolyte. This is a baseline skill for the Acolyte. So this isn't anything for the Necro or the Lich. This is just Acolyte, and it's a dot that's going to put an aura on an enemy, and that aura is going to deal fire damage to the enemy itself and everything around it. Now you can stack these up, have up to 4 at a time. It makes it for a pretty interesting kind of affliction style build, where you can dot up everything around you, have your minions do a lot of the heavy lifting, and then you can sit in back and kind of activate your filler ability and weave those in. So there's a lot you can do here. Once again, I kind of jumped in, tested that a little bit. I really like this one, and I think I'm going to try to make it work with some sort of a build. So we'll see what the future holds for Infernal Shade. But right now, again, strong starter. Next is the Shield Bash ability. This is going to be baseline for Sentinels. So once again, you don't need to have any sort of specialization. This comes with the package. And this is a shield attack that's going to stun enemies. It hits. It does have a small amount of damage that scales up with block chance. Now, testing out Shield Bash, with my current Holy Fire Paladin build that I have, this doesn't really fit into my kit. But I can see it having some potential for its stun. I don't think this is going to be a primarily damaging ability unless you just stack the hell out of block chance and try to go down that road. So all in all, 3 pretty solid abilities. I'm curious to see what people can do with these. Right now, I think they're going to be good additions to builds, but not necessarily build defining themselves. So kind of rolling off skills, let's go ahead and let's talk about the changes to skill specialization. So if there was one thing that people complained about for last Epoch, it's the visuals and animations. Those are getting taken care of. But the number 2 thing is it's painful as hell to go ahead and try to rebuild your character. Sometimes it's better just to re-roll. And one of the things specifically I hear is skill specializations. And that is where you can go in, set up a skill, you level it up, and you kind of spin the points in the skill specialization tree, and it goes up to rank 20. Then if you want to switch that skill out, it resets whatever skill you put in there back to level 1, and you feel like you just wasted everything. So it wasn't a great implementation. I understand what the devs were trying to do with adding importance to choices, but I think this system is going to be a good compromise. So skills now have minimum skill levels that increase as you level up. So for instance, at level 70, my skills start at level 9. So if I want to go replace a skill, the new skill I put in there is going to start at level 9, and then my old skill is level 9 as well. So this really helps encourage creativity and experimentation when you're trying to figure out a build. So I really expect a lot more people to kind of get out there and experiment a little bit more rather than just attaching and gluing to whatever is meta. So exciting times in the build space. Now, on top of all that, we also have Defile, Ice Word, Manifest Weapon, and Molten Blade. They were all removed from the game. So if you had a build that used any of those, you should have gotten a free reset, but just keep in mind that those are no longer available. So let's move into the other massive part of this patch, and that is protections, defense overhaul. So last Epoch no longer has protections, it now has resistances, and these resistances work similar to other games. They have a cap of 75%. Anything you have below that, you're going to take increased damage from that element. You're going to be able to stack these up just like you typically would. And the big change here is Vitality and Attunement no longer provide elemental and necrotic, void, and poison resistances. You're going to have to get those from other sources. Instead, Vitality gives you health and health regen, and Attunement gives you mana. So your gear might be a little bit out of whack when you first log in because you were stacking up protections for something different. You were stacking attunement to make sure you were covered on your elemental protection, so you might be really, really low there. I know I was. So make sure you go out and get all that stuff trued up. So for me, I really like this change. I think this is much easier to understand, and I think it's much easier for new players to understand. If they come from Path of Exile, if they come from Grim Dawn, if they come from Diablo, I mean, they're going to be able to pick this system up much easier easier than the protection system because it's something that's become sort of an industry standard when it comes to defense. So I do like this change. I think it's a good change, one that's going to benefit the game long term. So there are some other kind of small things. They added some new uniques. They added a new set of gear. They changed up some of the skills. They fixed some bugs. So there is kind of a lot that went into this. The patch notes are in the description below, so you can sort through if there's something specific you're looking for. These are all the big things. These are the high ticket items that were added to this patch that a lot of people were really looking for. The nitty gritty, I highly encourage you to go out there and check it out. One thing I will say is optimization for me personally seemed to take a little bit of a hit with this patch. I'm sure it'll get smoothed out. Beforehand, things ran pretty well. Right now, I'm experiencing a stutter every now and then, so that's something that I encountered before. They were able to fix it, and now it's back. So it's most likely patch day jitters, but we're gonna go ahead and just chalk it up to that. So I wanna hear from you guys. What do you guys think about the patch notes, the new content, the new visuals? Gotta hear from you guys. Let's get talking downstairs. And as always, thank you so much for the support. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.